What's going on, everybody? We got a very special interview here with Adam. In today's video, we're going to talk about how his journey was when he was homeless and now that he is housed now. So, Adam, go ahead. Tell us about yourself. Tell us where you're from.
So I grew up in Southern California, I guess more in the Central Valley, and I just had like a normal life. Actually, I would say I probably had a pretty like privileged upbringing. I had a really good life, and then just through a series of, I mean, truly misfortune. I can't even like. I remember when I was going through it, I would tell my friends, and I remember one friend, he said, "Man, you are just taking an endless series of L's," and that might date like the conversation, but I started thinking like, yeah, this is like really extremely bizarre. And I remember talking to this pastor, this preacher at the time about everything that was going on, and I remember at the time he said something like, God does things so that we learn lessons, we learn things about ourselves and the world. And once you get through it, once you learn this lesson, you'll get through it and God will give you something else. But, after like 1,000 lessons, you start to wonder if there's something you're really missing. So, yeah, sorry, I don't know if that rants, but I just grew up in Southern California, never really left my town. There's a city nearby. Kind of live in Fresno. I don't know if you're aware of that place. I just kind of say it's like a few hours outside of LA, even though it's not. But yeah, and I grew up there, and things happened. Things got worse, and it was just during COVID, and what can you do? But yeah, it's me.
That is an amazing story. How old were you when you first became homeless? And what was the first night like when you were homeless on the street?
Actually, I'm trying to think. Okay, so how old was I? So that happened back in 2019, 2020. I think I went homeless from sometime around there. Kind of, it's all like a blur that year. But that would have been 5 years ago. So I would have been about 22, 23 when I first went homeless. So I was pretty much an adult. I wasn't really too worried about that. And then, sorry, you said the second thing. How old was I? And then what else?
What was the first night like? Like, what was going through your head when you were like, okay, I'm officially on the street and I have no roof over my head? How were you feeling?
Okay, so I'll try to describe it literally, and then I'll try to describe the emotional thing that I was going through because the this is probably the worst part. When you go homeless, you're so emotionally distraught that all your preconceived notions and all your ideas about homelessness kind of become your reality, even though that might not be what reality is. So what really happened was a bunch of stuff happened prior to this for me to end up homeless. So it was a bunch of really tragic stuff. My father left. He was in a really bad car accident, and then that happened. And at the same time, my cat. And I know this is like really weird to mention my father and then my cat, but um, that same week, my cat got so deathly sick, and it didn't make sense. He was perfectly healthy, he was perfectly good, and then he just stopped walking and he stopped eating, and then he passed away. And I remember, we were losing everything. The landlord was kind of coming down. This was during COVID when they were going to start demanding like repayments because California was doing some different things with landlords and stuff. And I remember being in the backyard digging this grave for my cat, and I just kept digging. I mean, you dig a small grave for a cat, but I couldn't stop digging because I couldn't believe that he was really dead. I just kept digging and digging and digging because I didn't want to stop digging. And I ended up digging this hole that was big enough for me to sit in. And I just sat in there with my cat for a long time thinking about everything that had happened. And I think about these things a lot because I still remember this. It felt like the world was ending. It was like if someone had said nuclear weapons are headed for the country at that moment, I would have said, "Why not?" I would have said, "Why not? Why? It may as well. May as well happen." And there's a bunch of other stuff happening as well. So my reality, quite literally, was breaking down, leaving. I remember just crying and saying things. I don't remember what I was saying. I just remember it was the moment that I saw ashes to ashes. That's the best way I can explain it. The ashes of the old world, the ashes of the new world. And my first night, so it wasn't too bad. So I'll talk a little bit more in detail. This is kind of vague of jumping back and forth. But my first night really was in the car because thank God, uh, all glory to him in all these moments. But I was never fully street homeless. So I lived out of my car, which at the time was about as old as I was. It was a 1999 Toyota Avalon. And I don't know if you know the Avalon, but it's supposed to be like the luxury car of it's like a Toyota Corolla, but more of a luxury car. So it was, I had these very nice seats I was sleeping in the back of, and I was just homeless. And I remember in that moment thinking, what do I do? Like, this is, you have an eviction on your record, your credit is totally shot. I remember just thinking about all these things because they didn't matter. They didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but I remember just thinking, what's going to stop me from being homeful again? And it was my credit score shot. Um, I have no money. I have no family, really, nobody there. And I was like, well, what can I do? And that whole night, with just me laying in the back of the car, um, I remember I gave a prayer. I said something like, Lord, um, if you kill me now, I would really appreciate it. I remember like this, like, Lord, if you want me to die, if this is how you do it, I will go willingly. Kill me now, like, please, Lord. And that was my whole first night. It was thinking about the end of the world, thinking about the new world, thinking about how there was no hope. I had no hope. And I remember specifically, and again, this is all kind of a blur just because of how dramatic it was. I was driving down the highway, and because when you try to find a spot to sleep, especially that first night in a car, you feel like wherever you go, everyone's watching. There's like this terrible feeling of everyone can see right through you, especially for like that first night. I didn't have, like, my windows are totally open. Toyota Avalon is like, the windows are the biggest windows of any car, right? So it just felt like, oh man, someone's going to see me, someone's going to whatever. I remember wearing my best clothes because I kept thinking, oh, if a cop asks me what I'm doing, I'm just going to tell him, "Oh, sorry, sir, I was too tired to drive, and I didn't want to be a reckless driver, so I'm just going to sleep here. Then I'm going to move in the morning back to my house." I remember thinking of this lie of what I was going to do, but I was trying to find a spot where this wouldn't happen, where there wouldn't be a confrontation. I was driving on the highway, and I was doing 80 miles an hour. I remember this specifically because I used to never speed. I was so rigid about this. In California, everyone's speeding, right? Like, everyone's driving 70 miles per hour on the highways, even though the speed limit is like 65, 55 for large vehicles. But I always remember seeing it as like a point of pride that I'll never go above 50, 65, never, ever, ever. And here I was driving 80 miles an hour into nothingness. And that's what it felt like. It felt like I was going fast towards nothing. And then when I was laying in my car, thinking about all these different things, thinking about how there was no hope, I was in nothing, and I just thought, okay, I'm just going to sleep and hope I die. And that was the first night. That was what it was like.
Yeah, that was a lot, man. I mean, you've been through a lot and you're able to push through, and you got to thank God for that. So I'm glad you're still here. I'm glad you didn't, perish away and you still get another chance, because there's a lot of people out there, man, that they don't get to live to see adulthood. You live to see adulthood and you can keep pushing. And not only is this interview going to help other people, but someone might change your life seeing this interview when it comes out. So I'm glad that you're here with us, and I'm glad that you're here to share your story, because there are millions of stories right now that are in the grave. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate this. The next question that I have for you is, how did you stay safe while you were homeless? I know you said you were in your car, but is there any tips or method that you can give to people out there that are homeless?
Yes. Okay. So before I went homeless, before I was living in my car, I was very much aware that I was going to go homeless. So I remember there was a period of denial. I remember I kept thinking, like, oh, I'll find a way to pay. So at the time, my rent was for where I was living. Because I was living with my stepfather and some other people. I was only paying $500 a month. That was my rent in California, which is like awesome. So I was working, doing a writing job, and I was paying $500 a month. And I thought, okay, that's all I have to do. It's all I have to pay, and then amongst my other building expenses. But then when my father left, um, and other things happened, and other things were going on, the landlord wanted to the full rent for the month. He wanted everything. because I guess other people weren't paying. This was during COVID, so no one had money. Like a lot of people were laid off from their jobs. A lot of people, I mean, the food prices were crazy. I mean, it was really. I think people forget just how hard it was, and so the landlord claimed. I never knew if this was true. I don't know if the landlord made this up or if he claimed something or if his accounting was off. But I was kind of like sublease, so I never knew the actual the payment was, how much was paid up. But he claimed that the payment was 6 months behind, which I thought was really strange because I've been paying every month my share, and I thought, well, where's that money going? That didn't make any sense. But so whatever. I forgive him, and if he was lying, let his theft of me be coals on his head. If anything, let it be a gift from me. But he wanted the full upfront payment, and that would have been paying $2,700 a month. So I say this to say, if I wanted to stay, he wanted someone paying the full payment, and it would have been up to me to pay $2,700 a month. And I don't know if you know what it's like to live in California, but that is impossible for rent. Like, if just to even qualify for that, if I need to do paperwork, you have to make 3 to 4 times that rent as income, right? So I would need to be making an $80,000 a year job, which I was not. I was 22, just finished an associate's degree, just trying to get into university, right? So this was like the process at the time. And so it became very clear to me. I remember there was a bunch of other things the landlord wanted me to do. He wanted me to like replace the carpet at my cost. He wanted me to fix some of the stuff that was happening. And there was a point in time when I was like scrubbing the ground to try to get it ready for adhesive to do some other stuff. And I just remember sitting there and saying, why? And I didn't excuse my language, but this is really what I said. I said, why am I doing this? I hope this guy just burns in hell. Because I remember just thinking, and forgive me, because I hope everyone is saved. But I remember in this moment thinking, there is nothing I can do to save myself in the situation. There's absolutely nothing I can do. After I pay for this and do all this, he's still going to evict me. He still wants to raise rent. He still wants to do like this guy just lying and scamming. And I'm going by his word. What is his word worth to me? What a useless word it was. So I remember sitting there, with my knees on the ground, saying, okay, I'm going homeless. There's nothing else I can do. There's no rent I could qualify for. There's nothing I can do. I'm going homeless. What do I do now? And so that's when I watched this video on YouTube. I think the channel name was called House Bread. And I remember this because I remember thinking that was fitting because where I lived, there was like a nickname for the street that was bread, and it was like house bread. So I'm like, oh, that's very funny. And he made a video in his car talking about the number one thing to do if you go homeless is to get a Planet Fitness membership, because this is like when Planet Fitness was really getting big. And I thought like Planet Fitness, the place for like lazy people go to get a free pizza. Like, what is he talking about? But then I found out, they have this like black card deal that's like $15 a month, and I signed up for like super cheap. There was no sign on fee, no monthly fee. It was like I think they had a special, so my first year was free. I just had to give a bank account and some other details. And thank God I did it then. Like, thank God I had the silver money to do it then, because if you try to sign up for something while you're already homeless, like if you don't have ID, if you don't have like, because that stuff will just get stolen from you. If you don't have proof, if you don't have a bank account, you will never be able to sign. They just won't let you because they don't want people like that signing up at their gym. But the question being, what is the best way to stay safe? Well, the best way to stay safe for sure was getting that gym membership, because Planet Fitness was all across the country. I could take a shower. They had blow dryers. They had towels. Not all of them have towels. Not all of them have blow dryers, but you can kind of pick and choose. And the parking lots were safe because it was always like meatheads in the parking lot. And these guys are on steroids. And if someone is like tweaking out, these meatheads are not scared to like maintain order at their gym. And I just remember thinking that, you know, and I've never met House Bread. I don't know if his channel's still up. I don't know if the video's still up, but this guy really saved my life. And I mean this genuine. This guy really did save my life, because if I didn't have that, if I remember there was some other tips too. Like if I wanted coffee, I'd go to a bank, and they'd always have free coffee. I remember there was just a bunch of random stuff. But the best way to stay safe, and I say this with like such a heavy heart and such compassion, sadness. But the best way to stay safe as homeless is don't look homeless. Don't let other people know you're homeless. always act like you're busy or doing something and have a strict routine. Like if you got to spend an hour at Burger King, spend an hour at Burger King in the morning. If you got to walk down the street and then spend an hour at the library, spend an hour at the library. But don't ever let anyone know that you're homeless, because once someone knows you're homeless, that you don't have a family, that you don't have anyone looking for you, you're target. You're just going to be a victim. That's just what's going to happen. So I remember there was times when I would be sitting in the car and I would put a podcast on the radio to make it seem like I was on a phone call talking to somebody. I remember that's how like totally schizo I was going to try to make it seem like I remember at night if things look sketchy, I would put on my phone the sound of like because you can look up on YouTube like ambience of police chatter. And so I would put it like the police chatter to make it seem like my car was a cop car and I was like an undercover cop. And I remember I was doing everything. I remember one time there was a group of like not these guys are not doing good. I mean, they look like total. When you see people with chapped lips and like the crazy look in their eye and they're really greasy, you know that these are people that are like 100% going to like if they're looking at you and they're staring at you, because most people won't look at you, right? Like if even if they look bad, they'll kind of keep their head down, they'll be very respectful. But if they're like looking at you and mad dogging you, you know, okay, this guy is going to. There's something going on that he wants to attack. And I remember I was walking down the street and there was like three or four of these guys all in a group and they were just walking down the street in my direction. And I thought like, oh man, it's too late to start running. As soon as you run, they'll start running. It's too late to go around. So I just started shouting in gibberish. So I remember, and so this is, I'm so ashamed of this, but this is 100% true. I was so nervous about it, but I knew like I couldn't like shout in fake Spanish, because I didn't know it well enough, and I knew they would probably know it better than me. Some of them at least, because we live in California. Some people like you'll find the whitest guy or the most Asian-looking guy, and they'll be fluent in Spanish, right? With, like the fake accent, and everything. So I thought, well, I got to just come up with a random language and just shout that. So I was like doing this. If this is totally not cool, this is like totally not appropriate. But I was so scared, and I was probably schizo, and I just started shouting like "for shout bang out bang," like just crazy noises back at them. And I remember when I was doing this, one of the guys in the front he goes, "Ooh, bad vibes," and they crossed the street from me, and I thought, "Oh man, am I actually the crazy one here?" Like, I remember thinking, like, "What's going on with me?" But yeah, when you stay, the goal to stay safe is just, I I guess the number one rule is don't let people know that you can easily be a victim, and that's really the core of it. Don't give off the vibe or the energy that you will be an easy target. Just always give off the feeling that you have somewhere to go, something to do, you're somebody, and you're not what you really are. You're not just some guy walking back and forth who, if he disappeared, no one would care. No one would remember you. I guess that's the only thing I can say about that.
And yeah, you basically cannot let yourself look like a victim, because if you do make yourself look like a victim, people are going to treat you that way, especially if you're a small person or a woman. We know it's 10 times harder for you to be on the street and for people to respect you. But my
Mhm.
next question that I have for you is, was there ever a place or a person that helped you while you were homeless? And can you explain that situation and what happened? And how did it make you feel when you found that kindness for once?
When I was homeless, nine times, I'm not even nine times, it's like 99 times out of 100, when someone finds out you're homeless, like when you tell them, like if you're just friends with them at the gym and then you say, I'm homeless, and then later my story was that I was still living out of my car, but then I started attending university. And that changed a lot for me. I had, more access to the student union. I had more access to stuff. But there was a long period of time where I didn't have that. So I was like totally comfortable not having that, right? But then when I became a student, still living out of my car to attend the campus, um, if another student found out that I was homeless, because some students are weird, right? They'll try to like find your card, or if this was they're friendly, they'll like follow you around, and it'll be like 10 p.m. and you'll be like, okay, guys, I gotta go, and they'll want to walk to your car with you. So if you live out of it, they're just gonna find out, right? And 99 times out of 100, when people find out you're homeless, their entire view of you changes for the worse. And so I will give another story that I think is a bit more funny, just because it prefaces this really sad thing that happens. But I would always call it the dragon look, because the first time it ever happened was I was at the gym, with like this older lady, And she was talking about the economy and job hunting. I was like, yeah, yeah, I'd really use a job. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm doing. And she was like, oh yeah, try this, or so I know so and so. And she was like trying to hook me up and be really friendly because we were just talking at the gym. And then when she found out I was homeless, I remember her face just clenched up and changed. And in that moment, she looked like a dragon. And I just remember saying, okay, that's the dragon face. That's just what's going to happen. And of course, it happened over and over again, at different times. And that's just the truth of it. Most times, even if someone you think are like really cool, really nice, really friendly, as soon as they find out you're homeless, they automatically assume things or they claim things, or I mean, the constant assault of questions alone are is so sad because and I don't blame anyone that wants to know. Like, if you want to help someone and you want to know the story before you help them, I get it. You're trying to discern, you're trying to like put more good out in the world than bad. But when you ask someone why they're homeless, they have to relive through that trauma like over and over and over again. And especially if what happened was so bad that it's just hard to talk about at all, like period, it's even harder to do it while you know someone's like judging you on whether or not you're worth helping. And it becomes something that's like a really big stress. But I remember what ended up happening, and this is kind of like probably more sad than anything, was so I was homeless for some months, and then I attended university, and I got in on a degree plan for pure mathematics. That was my what I was going for, pure mathematics, and that ended up changing a little bit, but it always stayed pure mathematics. And so the pure math department had only like 30 students in the whole department because no one wants to do math, right? Everyone hates math. And so they had a lot of funding and money, but they never spent it. And so there was one time I was walking to my car and I was sleeping in my car, and I think his name was Isaiah, and I think he wanted to prank me because he was kind of a prankster. He was a real good friend. We had done some like academic tournaments together. We'd won some awards, some trophies and stuff. And he followed me to my car. I didn't know he followed me because I didn't want anyone to know at this point, especially the other math students. And I was in my car and I was sleeping in my car. And all of a sudden, I heard knocking on my window. And at this point, I already had like my windows covered with window reflectors and stuff like that. I'd gotten wise to putting nets over them, the black nets, and so on. And so I heard a knock on my window, and I thought, "Oh man, it's the campus police. The jig is up. They found me. I'm getting towed because that was like you literally sign a paper that says like if you try to live in your vehicle, they will tow you or something, right?" And so I opened the door, and I was already like practicing the lie, like, "Sorry, officer, I was so tired, I can't drive back. I live in some other town, far away from the campus." I was already like getting ready, and I opened it up, and my friend Isaiah was there, and I remember the look he had in his face when he looked down at me. It was like this really sad look and it wasn't the same dragon look. It wasn't this hate or judgment or disgust. It was like the look you give when you're grieving. And he looked down at me because I remember, in the Toyota Avalon, we were laying back, and he looked down at me, and I was looking up at him, and he said, "Hey, uh, Adam, are you living out of your car?" And I mean, you can see all my stuff. It's like at this point, it's super obvious. And I looked up at him and I said, "Yeah." So I remember thinking like, I'm gonna try. No, no, I'm just camping. Urban stealth camping. I wanted to just say anything other than the truth. I wanted to just say anything other than what I really was. And he said, "Man, are you living in your car?" And I said, "Yeah." And he just kind of shook his head and he said, "Okay, man, good night." And then he closed my door and he left. And I remember sitting there thinking, well, there goes my friend Isaiah. That's going to be it. And then that next morning, um, they got a couch, a sofa from Math Lounge. And they told me that if I wanted to sleep in there, then I could sleep in there whenever I wanted. They said that I just couldn't sleep in there after 8 p.m., which is like hilarious. And they opened the door at 6 a.m. And they gave me a key to the door that I can go in after 6 and before 8 p.m. So between classes, I had some blocks. So like from during one semester, I had from like 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. I would just sleep there. And this is like a good thing to do. If you can sleep in a safe place during the day, then you don't have to worry. Like you can just chill at night. It's not so bad. But that was probably the biggest thing of And I wouldn't even say if he did nothing for me, that wouldn't have mattered. The fact that he saw me for what I was and looked at me and just had the compassion to experience my pain, to have the compassion to look at me and partake in my pain as grief, that alone is probably the greatest prayer anyone could have ever done. And and he took it on himself to like help and do other stuff because he experienced that grief, internally. But I would say if there was ever a moment that someone really had a very compassionate moment, it was the moment that my friend stayed my friend after finding out who I really was. That's what I would say about that.
That was amazing, bro. Like honestly, I just love that story. Shout out to Isaiah. Isaiah, if you're watching this, you're the man.
Yeah.
And fact that he didn't judge you and he was just like, hey, good night. You know what I mean? Like he didn't know what to say, but he wasn't judging you in a nasty way. And we need more people like that, Isaiah. So that's actually great to hear that. So, Adam, while you were homeless on the street, what was a typical day like? Like, tell me since you wake up, what did you do from, afternoon to evening? Like, what was your whole schedule like while being homeless?
Okay, so this I can actually tell you down to the minute because it was so rigid. But so before I was in university, my schedule was quite literally just I sleep in my car from after it gets dark and before it got light. So in the summer that's shorter, and in the winter that's longer. But it would be like from my 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. was my sleep time. At 5 a.m., things start opening up. But Planet Fitness is 24 hours. So if I ever couldn't sleep, I would go work out at Planet Fitness because the idea was if I can't sleep, I should not be awake in my car. My fear was always that like if I'm awake in my car and just sitting there, then it somehow attracts bad things to it. I know this is like a really schizo thing, but when you're asleep in your car, it almost feels like you're invisible, like the time's not there. But if you're awake laying in your car, there's something about it that like I think you're moving too much, you end up flicking a light too much or whatever. You just get caught more often. And so I would leave if I woke up before 5, I would leave and just work out at the Planet Fitness to try to pass time and get myself to fall back asleep. And usually I would fall back asleep just because of how long the days are. So the best way to explain this feeling is the average person has one day and one night, and the homeless person has 2 days and one night. So the way this is explained is you have the morning, which is its own day. And then you have the afternoon to the evening, and that's its own day too, because things totally change from that point on. And then during the night, that's a whole extra day because there's so much that happens even more so at night. It just gets progressively worse. So 5 a.m., I would wake up, go to the gym, I would shower. I remember I would time it so that I would spend an hour from 6 a.m. And then after 6 a.m., I would go to my car and I would start organizing all my stuff. So I had a journal at the time where I would write and I would kind of like write down my thoughts, write down what I was going to do. I write down things I needed to do. So while I was homeless, and this should like be a sign that the credit report stuff is all fake, because when I was homeless, I was getting approved for credit cards. So because I was trying to rebuild my credit, right? So I had probably got like I think I got somewhere between 12 to 18 credit cards. New credit cards, by the way. Like I wasn't committing any fraud. I was literally just putting on like, oh yeah, here's my PO box, I have an address. Here's whatever. This is what I make in a year. What do I qualify for? And these companies would just give me like credit cards, like over and over again. I was thinking, oh my gosh, dude, this is kind of like your fault if I don't pay these back. But of course, I never used them because I wanted to fix my credit. I wanted to be, and which thank God that did happen. So a lot of people, say don't open too many credit cards. That's if you actually look at the system. There's a way to game the system, and they update every 2 years, so you got to like learn the new system. But there's always a way to game it that you maximize your credit point approval. So a lot of my list was like, okay, what company can I contact? Who can I talk to? Where can I go for coffee? Where it was literally just writing list after list after list. I remember this is something that I would do, and this was just also an anxiety thing. I would take a flashcard, and you can see I still do it because I have so many flashcards. I would take a flashcard, and on just the line part, I would write down who I wanted to be. And this is like super weird. But I remember I write down bachelor's of pure mathematics, 1 year experience. Just writing down who I wanted to be, like what I wanted my resume to look like, and then I would look at that and I would say, okay, this goal, I want to work on this goal today. How can I break that down into a task today to do? Like that was what I would do for an hour from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. After 7 a.m., things would start opening up. So at 7 a.m., you could go to Burger King. So my mother was also homeless at this time, and so at 7 a.m., I would meet my mother who was living in her vehicle, and we would go to Burger King and we would spend an hour there at Burger King eating and talking. And the reason why I say we'd spend an hour there is because they would literally kick you out after an hour. It didn't matter if you bought a drink, it didn't matter if you had food. If they just saw people that were hanging out for more than an hour, it didn't matter if it was rich or poor or homeless. So, at least they're equal in the discrimination. But if you spent more than an hour in Burger King, they'd come up to you and say, hey, you have to go. We have a 1 hour policy for the dining room. You have to leave, such and such, right? So what we would do is we would buy a drink. We would get the infinite refills for that hour, just drinking Pepsi, whatever caffeine we needed for the day, which, by the way, is a lifesaver. You want to have like instant coffee or something with you. You want caffeine, and not because it's like not just for like the comfort of it, but you kind of always want to be aware. And if you can function without coffee, that's fine. But when you're homeless and you have no sleep and things are going wrong, you kind of need caffeine to function. And I'm not saying this as like someone. I'm not saying this from a religious perspective. I'm just saying this as anything that can help you maintain your sanity. Keep that thing close to you, right? So this Burger King thing of sitting in. I remember during the summers, it would get so hot that we would just be there just to get out of the heat, right? You would sit in there for an hour. And then after 7, I would do all the stuff that I'd planned, right? I'd say, okay, this is what I'm doing today. This is what I'm going to do. This is my task. This is what I need to work towards. And I would do that for as long as I could. And if I ran out of time, or if I did everything before my time, then I would spend the rest of the day writing more lists, right? And this was like my whole life was list after list after list. And I even had a journal that I would call Listices, because it was lists of lists of lists. And that was like how I just maintained my sanity. And I still have an old journal of mine. I don't know if I should show it, but you can just see paragraphs of writing of like doodles and drawings, just trying to get my thoughts down. And some of them are pretty out there, but just enough to try to have some structure just to get it out of my mind. And so that would be my whole day. And then at night, I would try to spend as long as I could at the gym. So usually the people at night at the gym were kind of like, and this is no insult to them. I mean this genuinely, is not as a joke, but they were like autistic people, people who were like guys who were lonely because they were incels. They would just go to the gym from 10 p.m. to like 3 in the morning, working out, listening. And these guys you could talk to because they saw themselves, even though it wasn't true, they saw themselves as such losers that they had a type of humility that no one else has. So these guys, if you even said something like, "Hey man, do you have deodorant?" They'd be like, "Yeah man, I got an extra stick of deodorant. Do you want it?" Like you're not even asking for deodorant yet. You're like, "Do you want it?" And you're like, "Yeah, if you don't mind, if I can have it, that would be great. But I just need like a little piece to deodorant." And then they would give you a piece of deodorant, and you would be like, "Hey, thanks, man. Like, I appreciate it." And they would be like, "Oh, yeah, man, we're gonna keep your head up, King. We're gonna win this, one day." And so those guys are always really excited for nothing. I mean, they were excited for every little thing that would happen. And you kind of want to be around people who are going to, even if it's like, even if it's people that don't know you, they're just kind of like generally that way. You want to be around people who have something that they're living for. And if it's people who have nothing, I mean, because people will be rich and they'll have like all these vain things, and really they have nothing. They're really living for nothing. They're really walking around dead. But when you have like losers who have these weird like beliefs about themselves or these worries, and you talk to them, they are living for something, because the reason why they feel this, the reason why they have this humility, is because they know there's something much greater that they're failing on. And this failure that they feel about themselves, really, it's a failure we should all feel if we're not, doing what we need to be doing. Um, this motivates their humility to want to see the successes and everything. And this is the most important thing. I remember I'd have my rigid structure, my rigid schedule, and the last end of the day would be to be around the people who see the successes in all the losers of the world. And I know that sounds like really weird and it's really hard to explain, so I'm trying to give an example. But that was my schedule before university. So when I was in university, it was way more based around my classes, the time I got to spend at the math lounge, the time I got to spend with the student union. During my 2 years of the university, when I was finishing up some stuff, I had started a science fiction club. It was the largest club at the time at the university. It started from nothing, and then because I just was homeless and had so much free time, I would just spend time handing out flyers that was paid for by the school because they give so much money to the clubs. And you can imagine that I would apply for every club grant you could get just so that I could offer free pizza, just so I could eat pizza or food whenever I wanted. Right? Like I was totally trying to game the system. Um, and you could, if you're a club president, you can book rooms. So I would book classrooms and just sleep in them if I had to, if I wanted to get away, because sometimes math lounge is too loud and crazy. And this is just what you would do. And I remember my second year there thinking, wow, the structure now, my routine is so much more in my control when I was at university. Even though like there's stuff that outside my control, like class times, professors, if you do research and so on. But I remember having the control to just because of the privileges I had of like being able to go to a library, student union, whatever. That I started realizing that the core of my routine. So rather than scheduling it by hour like I did before university, I started scheduling it by emotion. Like I knew in the morning I would feel a certain way because in the morning you're kind of like getting ready, you're feeling good. That's like your best time, but at least for me. And then by the evening I'm winding down. I can easily get frustrated, easily get upset. So I start scheduling myself around like, okay, how do I keep away? How do I stay away from people? How do I make sure I get some rest? And then at night after 12 and like midnight when the libraries would close at the university, I knew that I just wanted to be so tired that I'd be dead asleep. So before then, I would just exercise and exercise until I was dead asleep. So I'd go in the car and just pass out. And yeah, and then I'd get in at 5 in the morning. I would go to the gym and rinse and repeat the next day. I mean, it was just one day at a time. That's all you can do is one day at a time. But yeah, that was my schedule. It was super rigid, and then suddenly it was just built around my natural rhythm.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I kind of like how you broke down when you said the emotions. In the morning you will feel this type of way, then, the afternoon and evening. I never heard anybody say something like that, regarding their schedule in life. So that was that was really awesome. Um, the next question I have for you, you kind of already spoke on it, but how did homelessness affect your mental health, like afterwards when you were able to get out of the homelessness? Like, did you look at the world differently in a better way, or did you look at the world in a worse way? Like, oh man, this is a dark world we're living in.
I would say the greatest thing that homelessness ever gave me was, and I'm sure you can tell by like my icons of Christ and Peter and so on, but homelessness gave me the clarity to truly die to myself and to love God more. And I say this because before homelessness, I was so distracted that it's like being in a marriage with a beautiful woman who's really kind to you. She's beautiful, she's kind, she's tolerant. You can be as bad as you want to her, and she's always going to forgive you and take you back. That's what it was like my relationship with God, and I was abusing that all the time. I would be distracted with one thing or another, or you know, spiritual adultery and so on. And then when I went homeless, all these distractions, not only were they not available to me anymore, but I started seeing through them for what they really were. I started seeing them as things I actually hated. I remember when I was homeless, and this is, I want to talk about the mental health when I was homeless to after. Um, I remember not understanding how more people weren't homeless. I remember being homeless and saying, how are you making it? I remember there was a period of time when I was so angry that I would, like, when I go to the bank to get a cup of coffee, I talk to a lady who has no idea who I'm homeless. She has no idea we're talking. And I asked her, what does she do? I said, what's your job? And she goes, oh, I make $60,000 a year. And I said, no, but what do you do for work? Like, what's your job? And she said, I'm a assistant secretary to the branch manager. And I said, okay, yeah, that's a great title, but what do you do? Like, what's your day like? What's your job like? And she goes, "Oh, well, I just sit at the phone, I answer phone and redirect calls." And I remember, yeah, that was my reaction too. I remember going like this and thinking, I could do that. I remember sitting there thinking, not only could I do that, but I could program a subroutine that would make your job obsolete. I could program a voicemail system that would make you have no job. And I remember sitting there thinking, how many people have fake jobs? I remember thinking this. How many people have really, truly fake jobs and take pride in something that really doesn't exist? So I started seeing through this thing of what is a real job, what actually contributes to society, and what is just taken away from society, or what is just some inefficiency, right? And I remember realizing that most jobs in where I live, especially in California, were so fake that if you asked someone what they did for work, they couldn't even tell you what they did for work. They would use this like speak of, well, I handle the fiduciary responsibility of logistics and I recalculate the distribution analysis. And you listen to them and you're like, okay, but what did you do today? Like what did you do today? And they'll be like, oh well, I printed out some papers and left them on my boss's desk for him to review and get back to me on. And I'm like, okay, but what do you do? Like that's just a microcosm. Like you try to figure out how necessary someone is, like how necessary is his job, and then you find out some jobs only exist to be a middleman, to be a leech. Like, and I don't mean this about all lawyers, right? But like most lawyers, their job only exists to siphon from the system. Like they exist not as a real job that produces anything, but to try to take money from things that do produce, or to lock up the court systems, or pretty much this idea of blackmail, right? Like it's not legal blackmail, but it's a blackmail of time. It's like unless you pay me or give me this money or hire me, you're going to lose time, and because not because you lose time because it's inefficient, but because I'm going to make you lose time, right? It's people like this, right? And and that was just the beginning. I started realizing how much of society was truly vapid. And there was one time, and this is, I don't want to make it sound like every homeless guy is like a deep, wise dude you should listen to. But there was one time, there was this homeless guy on the street, and a car pulled up, and the guy that was driving shouted at the homeless guy like, "Oh, get a job, you bum! You're sick. F you. You're a leech on society. F you." Saying this to the homeless guy. Keep in mind, I already had the realization that the guy in the car who's driving his car to work probably has a fake job. He probably really is a society, like a leech on society, right? He probably works for like Raytheon. He probably is like the one who designs the chemicals to poison the planet, right? He's probably really this guy that thinks he's making it just because he has a bunch of stuff, right? So this is, I'm watching this happening, and the homeless guy is being shouted at, and then the homeless guy, I remember this is the funniest thing ever. He got in front of the traffic so they couldn't move. He because he you're yelling at him, so he just gets in front of the car. He's like he can't move, and as he's in front of the car, he says, "When I'm out here every day, I'm doing my job, and my job is more useful to society than your job." That's literally what he shouted in the car. I remember thinking, first off, by the way, don't do that. That's not cool. Don't forgive people. Don't let it bounce off of you. But I remember hearing this guy and thinking, wow, man, he's really spitting facts. So there was something when I had this moment. There's some introspection of me realizing, oh my God, what's happening to me? I remember sitting there thinking, what is happening to me that the dude that's crazy shouting in the street is the guy I totally understand. Like what's going on to me? And before this moment, I remember I would see a lot of like people just shouting gibberish on the side of the street. I mean, literally gibberish. Like they'll be on the side of the street yelling like 4 5 West 9 7. Like they just be sounding gibberish words, gibberish things. And I remember thinking, oh man, that poor guy, so on. And then once I got to this point where their gibberish was speaking to me, I realized how angry I was. I realized that I was so mad and I was so tired. And I remember asking God, I said, God, please don't let me lose my mind. Don't let me lose my mind. I don't want to lose my mind. I don't want to be a guy on the street who's shouting at the world and no one's listening to me. Please, Lord, don't let me lose my mind. And that was when the marriage to God became a very real thing. So, as I talked about, God is like this beautiful woman who's always tolerating you. And then I realized, I really want to do something for this beautiful. And I'm not saying God's a woman, by the way. This is like a hair set. This is like a good metaphor because I'm a man, right? when you're dating someone that you really love, you say to them, "Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go eat? What do you want to do today? Um, what would make you happy?" And then in that moment, I said, "Lord, I don't want to lose my mind. Lord, what do you want to do today? Lord, where do you want me to go? Lord, what do you want me to do right now?" And I remember having this moment of just realizing, I'm just so sick and tired of being angry. And the primer for this was like a week prior. I had was parked in a Walmart parking lot, and this is I had a dream that I was a samurai. So keep in mind, prior to going to homeless, I was like really into manga and anime. I was like the typical weeb guy, right? And I remember, and then so when I was in like university, I read this thing called Haruhi, like the life of Haruhi, and I wanted to be Haruhi so bad, so that was like the character I played when I was in university. But I was sleeping. I had a dream that I was a samurai, and there was this dragon attacking me. And I was like, "Oh, you're nothing compared to my thousand times folded Nippon steel." And I'm like fighting this dragon with this katana, and I know this is cringe, by the way. I'm so aware. This is where I was at, and this is my dream. And then I remember this dragon blew its fire at me. I was lunging at it with like the samurai spirit, and I was about to pierce the dragon. And right before I pierced this dragon, I could see its nameplate, and it said the Dragon of Tram Law. I remember that saying the Dragon of Tram Law. What does that mean? What does that mean? And then the dream ended with a knock at my door that woke me up. And there was a guy there. Again, I was parked in the Walmart parking lot, and when I was sitting there, the guy knocking on my door at the parking lot, it was a security guard there at Walmart, and he had a name tag, and on the name tag it said, "Hi, my name is Jared," but for the dot above the I, it was a heart. I remember thinking that it was a high heart. My name is Jared, and this dude had the look of a dragon, that same dragon look that these people give me. And I thought, there's the Dragon of Tram Law. That's it. Tram Law, Walmart, backwards. Like, that's it. That's what my mind is trying to say to me. And he tells me I need to leave. He's there telling me I need to go. I need to leave. I can't be there. I was like, "Hey, man, please, I'm so tired. Let me sleep." "No, you can't sleep." And I was like, "Please, just 5 more minutes." And he was like, "I'll call the police if you don't leave." I was like, "Okay, all right, I'll leave." And I remember thinking, I remember being so angry at that time that had I had a katana, I would have just attacked this guy, right? If I really, I was saw myself as a samurai getting ready to attack a dragon and pierce his heart, whatever. And so when this moment happened later, a couple weeks later, when I said, "Lord, what do you want to do today?" I saw the true way to defeat the dragon. And the true way to defeat the dragon isn't to be angry at anybody, but it's just to grieve for a bit. And then a lot of stuff like started hitting me. It was like, in the Bible, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the meek, blessed are, and I started like just accepting it, saying, "Lord, what do you want me to do today? Lord, what do you want me to do today?" And that was the moment where I finally stopped hating the world. But, and this is the important thing, I realized I never really loved the world. And I let it go. And I said, "Lord, if I'm going to be homeless forever, if I'm never going to have a wife, if I'm never going to have a kid, if I'm never going to have anything, I'm just glad that I have you. That's all I need." And then when I stopped being homeless, I could not believe it. I could not believe that I was no longer homeless, even today, because I got out of it. I'm renting now. The situation's pretty good. I still don't believe it. And the first month of being homeful, if this is a word I can use, the first month of being homeful, I remember I left all the doors and windows open, wide open, because I couldn't see anything. I used to be in my car where I could see everything around me, and you'd feel safe doing that. And then when I finally had a place, I left everything open, all the windows open, and of course, my roommate was like, "This is scaring me. Please don't. Someone's gonna break in and kill us." They had all this. I'm like, "Nah, no one's gonna break in and kill us. We live in a good neighborhood. This is a really nice place, really nice, whatever. I just need to be able to see." But I remember not being able to breathe if I had the windows and doors closed. I remember feeling like a prison. Like I needed to keep everything open. And that happened for only so long. And then I remember even being home from thinking, I need to go back to my car. I need to sleep in my car. And there were some nights, even though I was renting, I was sleeping in my car again, right? Just because that was my home. It really felt like my home. And even today, and this is, I think, a feeling that everyone who's ever been homeless has told me in some degree that you never feel homeful. You always feel like you temporarily have a home, but you always feel like you're ready to go back to being homeless. You really feel like the condition of the human nature is to be homeless. And I think, and I know this sounds crazy, but I truly think that is the case. I think that this world, it's real. You know, God really made it. He really made this world. It's not a simulation. It's not a dream. He really made it. But He didn't make it that our home is in this world. Our home is with Him. And this is why Abraham says, I'm a sojourner. This is why Peter and Paul write the letters saying to those who sojourn at the church of Rome, the church of Corinth, and so on. I think this moment that I had of I no longer hated the world, but I no longer had love of the world. I only wanted to love God more and more. It truly fulfilled for me this peace that and there's a quote in First John 2:15. This is like something I've totally kept close to my heart, but it says, "He who has any love of the world has not the love of the Father in him." And I remember just just getting it. I remember thinking, yeah, you really don't have peace and love until you just give all this up. Once you are willing to give it all up, then you finally have peace and love. But my mental health was wrecked. I mean, um, you're truly going through spiritual war, not just like a mental battles and physical battles because of your health. I mean, being sick, getting rashes when you're homeless, it's awful. It's like a fate worse than death. You see like these homeless people with like sunburns and everything. I really, it makes me cry. I want to give them stuff just because of I remember those feelings, but not just the physical mental stuff, but the spiritual stuff that's happening, the weird coincidences, the ability to hear the word more, to see the demonic stuff more. It becomes more prevalent just because there's not many distractions. You're so not able to make as much noise, and there's not so many distractions in your life when you're homeless that you start hearing what's really going on. And once that happens, I mean, say goodbye to mental health. You're no longer thinking like that. You're thinking about how to survive, and that's how it is. I mean, you never. I don't know. Some people say it's PTSD. I had a friend tell me that he thinks I had PTSD, but I don't think that's the case. I think like I've never been happier. I've never been more peaceful, but I'm always ready to just say, okay, Lord, if we're gonna be homeless and travel the country and spread the gospel and just be fools for Christ. I'm ready whenever you call me, and that's just what it becomes. You just become someone who never has roots ever again in this world. I don't know if that answers the question well.
That answered the question. And wow, I'm telling you, man, you're gonna inspire somebody, man. That was amazing. And the fact that you said you left all the windows and doors open, that's like that's a mental battle right there, but it's a good mental battle because you accepted God into your life and you're like, you know what? Everything is good. I'm not in no worry about anything. And your roommate, you see how you were in two different worlds? Your roommate's like, oh, somebody's going to attack us. And you're like, no, they won't. Everything is
Yeah.
good. We're fine. So that's what I meant by did it affect your mental health? And for you, you said it was erect, but when you look at it now, you were in a whole completely different realm, and you could have been in the same mindset as your roommate, but you're in a better one, in my opinion, now that you went through all of this. So,
Yeah,
I actually,
I totally agree. I agree as well.
so Adam, the next question that I have is what is the hardest part about rebuilding your life now that you're finally out of homelessness?
Oh man. Okay, so that's I would say there's probably three types of things that you have to work on. One is um, all the practical stuff. So you've been homeless for however amount of time you have, and if you weren't doing anything while being homeless, which is like, how can you, right? It's hard, it's impossible to get a job without being homeless. It's also impossible job to get. It's possible to get a job while homeless, right? So when I was homeless, I was kind of like aware. I was always kind of looking in the future because living in the present was just so terrible. But there was this feeling of I gotta keep working on my resume, keep working on like who I was, and then I ended up giving that up at some point. But I would do like volunteer hours at like just different places like soup kitchens. If I wanted to eat extra food, I'd do volunteer hours just to like be able to get access to extra food and so on, and so on. So I always had that. as a resume. But if you don't have anything for those however many years or months you're homeless, you just have that gap. And when you try to do anything and people say, oh, talk to an employer and like, what have you been doing the past 2 years? You can't say, oh, I was homeless. Because as soon as they hear that, again, it's like, oh, he's homeless. This guy probably has history of drugs, even though he's doing good right now. He's probably only like a year sober. Like they just start saying all these weird things. And keep in mind, I never drank. I've been a teetotaler my whole life. I've never drank. I've um, never did drugs, never did anything like that. Never smoked, never had a cigarette, anything like that. So when I would say, hey, and even if you struggle with that, that's not a reason to not give someone a chance, right? Like, if anything, that's more of a reason to give someone a chance because they overcame that thing, right? You know that they're really someone who believes and is really trying. And I remember, thank God I didn't have much of a gap. There was some stuff that like were pretty good signs that things were, weird. They would say things like, "Oh yeah, we noticed that you have these months here and these months there," or "Why did you choose a soup kitchen? Why did you choose like homeless?" Like, they will try everything they can to try to figure it out. But that's the hardest one is not having a gap. The second thing is just all the practical stuff. So once you do get a place to live, which, like, by the way, I knew this interview was going to happen. I kept thinking about like what's the best thing you could tell someone who's homeless to become homeful again? Like, what's the number one advice? And the truth is, and this is like a really awful truth, and I don't want anyone to become hopeless from when I say this, but it's almost impossible to become homeful again. It's the only way I've ever seen it happen is you just eventually have to get lucky. You eventually just stick it out and survive long enough that something happens and you just get lucky. You get someone who like sees you and says, "Hey, I got this place. I really need to rent for 300. Try it." Or you find a friend who's like, "Hey, man, I got a cool place. Come live with me." Or some obscure family member will come out of nowhere and be like, "Yo, we're cousins. You remember me?" It's always something like that. There's always some God comes through at some point, but you just got to be ready for when it happens. You just got to be in a point where you're ready for when it happens. So when it does finally happen, the number one hard thing is just being ready and maintaining it. Because suddenly you go from being homeless and feral to having to pretend to be civilized again. Like, this is the best way to describe it, right? You have to pretend to care about stuff that doesn't matter. You have to pretend to really just the social aspect of it. Like, someone says, "Oh, you get a roommate who their bad day is their dad didn't get them what they wanted, or their bad day is, oh yeah, this happened and this happened," and you want to tell them, you so badly want to say, "Hey man, that doesn't matter. That so doesn't matter that it's a joke that it's upsetting you. There's something in your heart that's causing for it to upset you. That so does not matter at all." But you can't do that. Like, you can try to hint and be friendly, but as soon as you give the hint that there's something fundamentally different about you, something that's fundamentally changed, something that's almost broken, this destroys your ability to connect with people, because people are just in the world. They're in the world. They're part of the world, and you got to just be in the world too for a little bit, and always maintain what you are. But I would say that's the hardest thing is being social, trying to just pretend to care, and there's something about it that's like it's a great spiritual struggle because you just want to you want to show people because it's such a I mean the best way to describe it is this. I had a friend who grew up like in a foreign country. It was like a small home, all of his family, and they only worked like 2 months of the year because they would plant food and whatever and harvest it. And then the rest of the time they would be like doing their studies or doing whatever to one day go to a different country. They finally get here and it's endless work, 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 more and more money. But with the more money is more expenses, more things, more you have to move to a more expensive place. And he says, "I'm working now, so much more working now, and I'm not happy. And back then, I was working just a little bit, and I was so happy. But now I'm working more than I ever have in my life, and I'm so unhappy." And that alone should be a sign that something's wrong, right? Because you talk to people and they're so unhappy, and you ask them, what would make you happy, and they say, "Oh well, it would make me happy if as if I did the thing that's making me unhappy more." And it's like No, it's no, it won't. No, it's not. And so that's the hardest thing is just trying to connect to people again, trying to see yourself as a civilized person in society. That's the hardest part. So practically, there's that, and the third part is just it. In that same vein, it's just like doing taxes. It's holding a job down. Because again, keep in mind, and I'm not saying to be rebellious or disobedient, because there is something quite humble in being obedient to a boss that is just wrong, that is just evil, is just whatever. But you'll work a job, you work a shift, and you get like 4 hours, and they'll only give you 4 hours. I mean, it's not even the hours they give you makes it not even worth it to go pick up the check and spend the gas to go get the check, right? Like it is like a pathetic existence they give you, and then the world wants you to thank them for that. And this is like the hardest part is they will really, in the most cruel way, treat you like you're not a human being, and then they say you're welcome. I don't. Sorry, I'm like trying to like rant or whatever. They'll be like, "Yeah, I put your hours in, and I think that you need to work on yourself a little bit more, and I think you need to learn when other people just need to do this and you need to do that. I think you need to stop sticking up for other people so much. I think you need to learn your place, and also cut your hours and you're back on probation again. You're back on work probation. You're not gonna get the promotion. And if you make another mistake, we'll just let you go. We won't give you warning. We'll just let you go because you're on work probation. And then you'll be like, okay, okay, okay. I understand. Okay, I get it. I understand. And then they'll say, you're welcome. And then you sit there and you're like, hey man, I think I'll just be homeless again. It's like and this is like I don't mean this like genuinely because it's hard, but there's always this feeling that you have a way out, and that's the hardest part about rebuilding your life is not running away because it's hard in a different way. Being homeless is hard, but paying rent and going from having nothing to having something. So it would be different if like you had a family and you went to university and you went straight into like owning your own place and paying rent pipeline, having a job doing that because at least you have a net, at least you have a family. But when you come out of being homeless and you have all these things all at once to do, plus all your problems and everything else, because that life doesn't leave you, it's always there, and the problems that come from it, you have all this new stuff and you're back to being civilized, having dual stuff. And it's like, what's who would care if I disappeared? Who would really care? Who would miss me? Well, no one, nothing. Who would care if I start walking again? There's something addicting about the free nature you get of being homeless. And this is a very dangerous thing. And I say this because as I preface this, there is something truly beautifully humble about not running away. But because it's such an option, because you're no longer scared of it, because it's always there, it becomes this cloud that really strips the joy out of a civilized world. It really strips it because you'll be like, I have my own place. I can do my prayers in my room. I can watch a TV, and then you'll sit there and you'll be like, this isn't worth it. I'll be homeless again, and it just strips the joy. It's hard to live in the moment. Um, so that's number one. The hardest part is that the practical stuff is so annoying. All like the work stuff, the dealing with people, the taxes. I mean, oh my god, the taxes. Everything's a tax now. I mean, I go to 7-Eleven. Sorry, I don't mean to rant about this, but I go to 7-Eleven. I buy a frozen burrito, and I just want the frozen burrito. I don't care. I'll warm it up at my place now that I have. I have my own microwave, my own place. I can go there. Give me the frozen burrito. The clerk puts the frozen burrito in the microwave, warms it up, and now I'm charged a hot food tax. And I'm like, hey man, okay, so now I didn't ask you to warm it up. Why did you warm it up? And he's like, oh, sorry, man, gotta pay the hot food tax. It's California. It's like, yeah, man, I think if I gotta pay this hot food tax for hot food that I could have warmed up in my microwave in my apartment, then I think I'll just leave my microwave in my apartment and I'll just have this hot burrito now. And that's how like absurd it is. I know this sounds so crazy, it sounds so absurd, but it really is how it is. So that's the hardest part with building your life is that. Sorry if that went on too long. Go ahead.
No, that was good, man. No problem. And I agree with you. It's like I talk to a few people and they say that. They're saying like it's really hard to want to live in society again once you have that freedom. because there's a lot of people who live in their vehicles. They backpack, they ride bicycles with a tent, they couch surf, they train hop. There's many different lifestyles out there that many people live, and they're like, why would I want to go back to a 9 to 5 and live in a room? All I do is go to work and come back and look at the four walls.
Yeah.
So that was great that you said that. The next question I have for you is just one piece of advice. What would you tell someone besides the Planet Fitness advice if someone's going to become homeless in the next 3 days, 72 hours? What is one advice you would tell them to do ASAP?
Okay. The number one thing I would tell them to do is really accept that you're going to be homeless. And I know this is like not an action, this is just like a spiritual thing, but you have to accept it. Um, it never fails that people who have never been homeless their whole life or never been homeless at all, that once they become homeless, they're so scared. They're so terrified. They have so much anxiety that they can't even think. So if that's you and you have so much anxiety and you're so scared and you can't even think, your life feels worthless because this is the moment where people even take their own lives, right? Because they just think, I'll never come out of it. There's no point, whatever. I want you to know that before you may not be religious. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the viewer that's listening. You may not be religious. You may not believe in God, and you may not know God. You may think, oh, I've heard these things. I think it's fake, or whatever. But God is truly real, and and I mean not just the evidence. I'll say one piece of evidence, but there's so much more. I mean, one great piece of evidence is that before Christ died, nowhere, anywhere in all of human history, nowhere, anywhere did any place ever abolish slavery. That never happened anywhere in all of human history. Even archaeological historical records have shown this. But after Christ died, we start seeing the abolishment of slavery wherever Christians went. And this fulfilled the prophecy of the Messiah freeing the people out of bondage, both spiritually of sin and both physically out of true bondage of slavery. And, just like how Moses brought the Israelites out of bondage, the Messiah fulfills this. And just that alone is so crazy. Like if you look at this and you realize, oh wait, that it truly never happened. That should be enough to show you that something changed. Something truly changed in the world, in the hearts of people. That bro, there's hope. There's so much hope. And more than this, don't think it's over. Don't think there's nothing you can do, because before you existed, God knew you and he loved you. Before you ever made, he knew you and he loved you so much that when he created the heavens and the earth, he said, these are incomplete without you. And when he made you with a purpose. He made you with a goal. He gave you a mission. And he loves you so much that I don't want you to give up that mission. There's something you're going through, something that you're experiencing, but I 100%, I know you have a meaning. I know you have a job. I know you have a goal. I know you have a vocation. I know you have a purpose. I know that you are loved. And I don't know you. I don't know who you are, whoever's watching this, but please understand, you have to first accept who you are, accept how that you are going to be like those people that you probably made fun of before. You are going to be those people that people hate and revile and humiliate. And when you're begging, because trust me, at some point you're going to be asking someone for something. Begging is the most humiliating thing you will ever experience in your life, ever. It is truly the most humiliating thing because you really are begging somebody to see you as a human being who doesn't want to. That's really what it is. You're begging someone to see you as being worth enough for the change in their pocket. That's what it's like. But brother, you are worth everything. You're worth, Christ saw that you are so worth dying for. So please accept who you are, accept where you're at, and just love God. And all that hate of everybody, man, if anyone robbed you or wronged you and you end up here, consider it a gift to them, because they're going to get what's coming to them. Trust me, they're going to be held accountable for everything they do. So know, brother, that all your wages that are stolen from you, they will be repaid in heaven. Know that everything that you ever lost, you'll gain even more so in heaven. Just know that if you have your treasure set in heaven, that's where your heart will be also. That's all I have to say about that. That's the greatest advice I can ever give to somebody, is to not give up hope, have Christ, have truth. That's all I can say about that.
Amazing, brother. Amen. Amen. And I had to learn that. Now I'm turning 25 in January,
Mm.
and what you said about forgiving people, when they do you wrong or when they wronged you. You know, that's very hard, and but you have to accept it, because if you don't forgive people for what they have done to you, then our heavenly Father can't forgive us, and we can't
Yeah.
make it into heaven. And I try to preach that on this channel too. Is you just got to turn to God. And when you're experience homelessness, that's kind of the best time. Now, any time is the best time to turn to God, but when you're on the bottom, like when you're below of the bottom of the barrel, you're down and out. That is the best time to turn to Him, because He will help you. He will forgive you too. A lot of people think, oh, that's just a fairy tale. It's not a fairy tale, because you're gonna have. There's really three options. You can turn to Him, or you can, go with the devil, And then the
Yeah.
third option is you can try to get out of it, but why not have God on your side, Why be in the world? Why be in the natural, when you can just always have Him on your back? Because remember, when we leave this earth, there's only two places you're going to go to, either above the earth or below the earth. So
Mhm.
I really, really love that response to that answer to that question. And the last question that I have for you is, what's next for you? Like, what are your goals? And I mean, it's kind of a two-part question, but also, what is your message to the world? Like, what do you want to tell the entire world?
That's probably the hardest question you've asked, actually. Um, So I have a YouTube channel, and that's kind of probably you've seen it since I've commented before, and I really love your videos. But I have a YouTube channel that kind of serves as like a journal of my life. And right now, the only goal I have is I think I kind of mentioned I was a bit of a weeb, but I've been studying Japanese more seriously, and my hope is to go to Japan and evangelize, and then die. Like that's my goal is just to die for God. And I know this sounds like it's super morbid, but um, I don't think there's more anything more useful I can do for my life than to go until I can't. Just to do that until I can't, because I think that's the most useful thing I can do. Now, a lot of people say otherwise. Like my friends, I know some of my friends want me to go into the priesthood. I had some friends that told me. I have a programmer friend who's now working. He has a high paying job, and because I did my degree in pure mathematics, it was a double bachelor's. Well, it was originally just a single bachelor's in pure mathematics. Then I did a double minor with it, and then that became just a double major just because I did so many extra credits. So it was a double bachelor's in pure mathematics and computer science, and with an emphasis on like scientific computation and at the time artificial intelligence, which was a precursor to like Q learning and neural networks. And so I know some of my friends really wanted me to do that, and I just became convinced that all that's demonic. Um, I really do think that this internet stuff, this internet of things, this AI stuff is so demonic that we're going to see such a change in the world that there's no point, and I say this not as a hopeless thing, there's no point in not living for today. Live day by day. Don't even like. I feel bad because when I went into university, I kept telling everyone like, "Oh yeah, get a STEM degree, get a pure math degree, get a computer science degree. That it's going to be the best." I was homeless. I would look up statistics at the library, like what's the highest paying one. You can't get a job now. AI has totally replaced it, and that's just in the 2 years from when I started going to university. No one predicted it. Even math professors never could have predicted it. Things are changing so much that now everyone I graduated with, or everyone I was in classes with, because I just dropped out towards the end. I didn't finish just because it was so pointless. Everyone in class with, they graduated. Not a single one has a job. Not a single one. So keep in mind, the entire time in university, they say, "Oh, you're gonna get 130K a year, you're gonna get 80K a year, you get 90K a year," and it's like, no way, dude. Like, no way. That's never happening ever again. That's never gonna happen ever again. I think it's like every year there's 100,000 people losing their job in tech alone. That's just tech, right? Just like IT and computer science and whatever. So yeah, I think the way the world's going right now, we're going to see a great time of martyrs. And this is not like prophecy. I'm not saying this as like, oh, I'm giving prophecy. I just think that's just the way things are going. People will either have to make a decision to live in this world and put up with the abuses or to die for God. And so my plan is I'm just reading the Bible, making money. I do random jobs here and there. I dig ditches. I do pipe work. for a guy that I really like. He's a really good guy. Make money anywhere I can. I just do random stuff. So I help people and preach the gospel. And some people just give me money for that. And that's just my day to day. I do that. And then I hope to save up enough to go to Japan and then preach the gospel. And hopefully, God willing, there's some Buddhist priest who like smashes my head in with a rock while I'm preaching. And that's my retirement plan. So I know that's like super not a great story, but that's my hope, man. If you're gonna pray for me, if you're gonna pray for my goals, pray that I am worthy of the gift of dying for God. Please pray for that genuinely.
Wow. That's pretty interesting, especially towards the end.
Yes.
This interview was amazing, man. I mean, you opened up my eyes. You definitely think differently than a lot of people. You taught me things that I never really would think about, or that I didn't think was really possible. Especially the way that you think about homelessness. A lot of people, when they think about homelessness, they just think, oh, I'm going to be on the street. People are going to pick on me. I'm going to be homeless for 10 years and I'm probably going to be hooked on something. But you prosper, you picked up the Bible and you pray to God about it. So that was really amazing. And you're telling people, like, you use a lot of different resources. You talked about the gym, you talked about food, soup kitchens, you talked about the university. So there's a lot of resources out there. And you mentioned you were like, what, 22, 23 when you were homeless.
Yeah.
So yeah, so and now, you're older now, 27, 28, and you're doing fine, so there is a way out. It's amazing to me, man, like how everyone's story is different, because your story to someone right now that sounds like the worst thing ever, but to another person that sounds like, oh, that's it, like you only went through that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, so you got to look at it in perspective. It's all about perspective in life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, there was definitely some close calls. There's definitely some moments where I really thought like, "Oh man, this is it." And yeah, you're right about other people's stories because I knew some people that have been on the streets for a while, and they just like, I mean, truly the most. I don't want to say it because I don't want to ruin the YouTube channel, but stuff that happened to them is truly the most horrific stuff ever. Um, I mean, just I remember there was one time when it rained and I couldn't help but get wet because there was just stuff I had to do, and the rash I got from the rain was so bad. My skin was feeling so bad and the pain was so bad I couldn't sleep. I just remember thinking, I'm going to die from this. And that was just like a rash, right? That was just like some random thing. But some people have, yeah, I really have to thank God. I really do think God was in the entire time because, in the moment it was really bad. Maybe this is just rose tinted glass nostalgia, but looking back, it was quite a great adventure. And I hope I have many more. But probably not in that same vein again, but I hope I have more like that that really helped me.
that's amazing. Um, that you said that about you wish you had many more. Many people wouldn't want that. So you're a warrior, man. I will say that personally, one on one, you're a very strong warrior. And whoever's watching this, I hope they really do get motivated and they take some key lessons. Hopefully they got a pad and a pen and they're making some notes, because this really opened up my eyes and hopefully opened up someone else's. But that's all I really have to say for this interview. Is there anything else that you want to say to the audience before we go ahead and end this?
Yeah, I actually wrote this down. There's just this person that I want to kind of shout out. So this is my cousin. Her name's Denise, and she was homeless for 15 years. So I knew about her even before I was homeless. I knew she was on drugs. She's one of those people that was out in the streets shouting at the world, shouting all crazy. I remember seeing her one time, and she just looked so awful that I remember thinking, and Lord forgive me for this, but I remember thinking, oh, it'd be better off if she was just dead. I remember thinking that. I remember thinking, oh, we're gonna find someone to find her dead, and it'll be really good mercy if she just died. And one day she did die. She fell into a hole and she broke her leg, and for a moment she was dead. And she was saved. She was brought back, and she saw what happened. She saw the other side. I'm not going to give any description of it because I don't think that's spiritually possible for anybody. But she changed so radically. The change she had was so genuine that I don't even recognize her anymore. She every day is helping people, going out there, doing food drives, going to every church she can, raising money, making burritos and selling them. And she just she lost all her teeth at one point, but now she got new teeth. Someone helps get her new teeth. She had all these other problems. She got surgeries, whatever, to help her health, and she looks beautiful. And I mean this truly. I mean, she looks totally renewed and transformed. She looks so beautiful. And I remember that day I saw her, and I thought, "Oh, it'd be better off if you were dead." And now I see her, and I just can't help but ask the Lord to forgive me, because even if you see those people that are like that, even if you see those people that they look like they're so far gone, there's no point in helping them, there's no point in doing anything. This is a demonic thought. Nobody, and I genuinely mean this, even like the virulent, angry atheist out there or demon possessed person, nobody is beyond saving. You can still do things to try to save them, to bring them into salvation. And if anyone says something like, "Oh, that person, you can't help them. They're destined for hell. They're destined for this, or they're destined for an end," that's a lie. That's so much a lie. And I just want to tell people that if you see a homeless person and you really don't see yourself, because we're all one person. We're all like, well, not one person, but we're all one thing. If you don't see yourself, and there's something wrong with your heart. And I just want you to not be scared, because if you fear helping people, then Jesus Christ isn't your God. Your God is fear. You're doing service to fear. If you hate people, then Jesus Christ isn't your God. Your God is hate, because you're acting in service of hate. I just want you to look at homeless people and say, and truly say this, truly mean this. That's me. That's me right there. And I don't want to be that anymore. That's all you have to say. That's me. I don't want to be that. What can I do? And if you just have that in your heart, even if you don't feel like you can do anything, just pray. Because really, the greatest form of charity is prayer. If you can just pray and have that true compassion, that would change the world. I mean, it would truly change the world to look at anybody and say, "That's me. I don't want to be that anymore. How can I help?" That's it. And I don't mean this in judgment. I mean this truly to look at yourself, that could be you. That really, in many ways, you're so blessed that that should be you. No one deserves this life that we live. That should be you in the street, and it's not. And thank God for that every day. Thank God for that every day. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you so much, Adam, for this interview. I really appreciate you. Well, guys, you have seen everything that we have talked about. If you do want to come on this channel and you want to be interviewed, just let me know. You can either DM me on Instagram or shoot me a message on Discord and we can set something up. Or even if you comment on this video, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you stay humble, make sure you stay positive. Please make sure you stay safe out there, and peace out.